Hey, everybody, and welcome to today's SecurityInfoWatch.com's exclusive web event. And today we're going to be talking, is gunshot detection ready for prime time? I want to thank Acoem for being our sponsor today. And Mike, you can beat me about the head and shoulders if I pronounce that wrong.
Acoem, Steve.
Acoem. There we go. Okay. So, as we get into this, gunshot detection technology is gaining traction as organizations seek advanced solutions to enhance safety and respond to active shooter scenarios. But is the technology truly ready to meet the demands of real-world applications? In this event, we're going to talk to our experts and explore the evolution, capabilities, and challenges of gunshot detection systems, helping you evaluate their role in your organization's security strategies. Our panel will bring a comprehensive understanding of how gunshot detection integrates with existing security systems, supports faster response times, and contributes to incident investigations. We will also examine the technology's reliability, potential vulnerabilities, and impact of emerging innovations on technology, on detection accuracy and deployment flexibilities. Some of the things we may talk about today include technical capabilities, integration with security systems, reliability and challenges, cost-benefit analysis and ROI considerations, and future trends, how AI and smart city applications may play into where this goes. I am Steve Lasky. I am the editorial director of the Endeavor Business Media Group, security sector, and that includes SecurityInfoWatch.com, our Security DNA podcast series, our Security Info Watch YouTube channel, and our publications, Security Business, Security Executive, and Locksmith Ledger. This presentation is live and interactive, allowing you to ask questions at any time via the Ask a Question box in the presentation window. We will answer as many of these questions as possible during the Q&A portion at the end of the webinar. And I am imploring all of you, please be involved. This is interactive, and we would love to get some questions from you. If you encounter technical difficulties during the webinar, please type your issue into the Ask a Question box, and a member of our team will assist you. If you run pop-up blocking software, disable it to view the webinar now. In addition, it is recommended that you close all the other applications for better performance in your browser. For your convenience, this presentation will be available for on-demand viewing within 24 hours of this live event. All registrants will receive a reminder email containing a link to the presentation, which will also be accessible from the SIW homepage. Again, we encourage you to ask questions anytime during the event using the Q&A tool on the left side of your screen. If we don't get to all the questions in this event, we will do our best to contact you afterwards for those pressing questions. As a reminder, also, you may qualify for CEU credits following this web event. If you would like to receive a certificate of attendance for today's event, please remain logged on for the duration of the webinar. You will automatically receive your certificate via email within 24 hours. Following the webinar, it will be your responsibility for checking with your association or organization to verify that this event meets all its criteria. Finally, today's webinar, which includes the audio, will be archived on our site for 6 months. And again, it will also wind up being on the Security Info Watch YouTube channel. So, with our housekeeping issues out of the way, I'm pleased to introduce our experts. At the top of our screen, next to me, if that's what you're seeing, I'd like to introduce Deputy Chief Henry King, Jr. Chief King, Jr. boasts 30 years of extensive experience in law enforcement, and he currently serves as the Chief of Police for the town of Eatonton since May of 2018. He began his career at the Rocky Mount Police Department in 2000, where he advanced through various roles, including uniformed patrol bicycle officer and school resource officer. Chief King's leadership journey saw him rise to the position of lieutenant in the Professional Standards Division and captain in the Criminal Investigation Division. He also serves as a task force officer for the North Carolina Secretary of State's office in the U.S. Department of Homeland Security. Chief King's commitment extends to serving in the executive board of the North Carolina Internal Affairs Investigation Association, as a commissioner on both the North Carolina Sentencing Commission and the North Carolina Locksmith Licensing Board. Chief is a U.S. Marine vet. He holds a BS in criminal justice from North Carolina Central University and a graduate of NC State University Administrative Office's management program. Also, Boston University Senior Management Institute for Police and the FBI National Academy Session 283. Joining us is also Zach Ham. Zach is a highly experienced professional with over 30 years of a comprehensive security consulting experience and risk management. His expertise spans risk assessments and security system design, project management, and validation, with a particular focus on designing and developing specialized security software applications. For 2 decades, he has designed and developed custom data interfaces, aggregation tools, and flexible platforms for web and mobile data acquisition and management. Zach's robust technical foundation encompasses strong backgrounds in electrical, electronics, physics, telecommunication, and IT. As the president and founder of Protective Resources, Inc., he consults for Fortune 500 companies and government entities, providing security consulting, enterprise systems design, vulnerability analysis, and custom application solutions. His work, which often involves large-scale integrated security designs for multi-building and campus environments, is particularly prominent in the financial, healthcare, manufacturing, and energy sectors. And joining us also is our sponsor, Mike Arnold, who is the ADT sales manager for Acoem. He is a seasoned leader with over 15 years of experience in delivering advanced technology solutions. He has played a pivotal role in the sales team and the account as account manager, successfully addressing the complex needs within Acoem's industrial maintenance and security solutions. Mike spearheaded the groundbreaking launch of acoustic threat detection technology in the U.S., a critical initiative stemming from Acoem's military defense division, MetroVib. His deep technical acumen spans a wide array of solutions, providing crucial monitoring, public safety, and protection in industries ranging from manufacturing to critical infrastructure. Mike is a Covington, Louisiana native and lives there with his wife and 2 kids. So let's get this party started. And Mike, let's do this with you. As a solution provider, you've seen the growth of this technology. What environments or applications can benefit most from deploying gunshot detection, and how does the approach vary by setting?
Yeah, so we're having a lot of success in schools, campuses, whether they're corporate or educational campuses, critical infrastructure, and then high crime areas. And obviously, all those different applications or verticals have a different approach from the way that they're deployed to those scenarios. For instance, in some of the high crime areas, and Chief King can elaborate on this, but trying to deploy these sensors in places where maybe a gunshot happens and 911 is not called. So giving that information to law enforcement in real time, and instead of waiting for that call when it happens, if it ever happens. When it comes to campus safety, school safety, things like that, more of that real-time information, so you can get it to take action as needed, whether it's a mass shooting on campus or a some type of acoustic threat that needs to cause a lockdown, or maybe use that information to move students or move employees to a different side of that facility. And then also in the critical infrastructure space, you're usually dealing with more rural applications where there might not be, security or a manned force at that site to get that information in real time to not only know if somebody took a gunshot, but maybe that gunshot hit a critical piece of equipment, and it allows you to take action on it before it has a critical failure. So those are kind of the main three places that we're having success and applications we're having success. And it just comes down to, there's a bunch of different technologies out there on the market. And there's different ways to deploy those. Some can be fixed application on buildings and poles. Some can be on mobile trailers. There's just a wide variety of ways to do it. But the best case is having that best line of sight acoustically and using other technologies to pair with it to be a force multiplier.
Chief, did you want to add anything about the environments and applications that benefit most from
Yeah, absolutely. What I would add to what Mike has just alluded to was you have to realize society, there's a lot of people that have grew up listening to gunfire. Because of poverty-stricken neighborhoods, they hear gunshots all the time. So they're not calling the police. And then we're not finding out that someone's house was hit by rail bullets until the person comes home from work, and or they may be out of town when the house was hit by a bunch of bullets. And then we got 3 or 4 days have passed by where it may have rained, people may have walked through the crime scene, and we can't find shell cases that we would have been able to found in real time and possibly responded in real time and maybe caught the perpetrators as they were leaving the area. So that these systems are very important because we live in a society sometimes where people just don't call the police. They have become normalized to gunshots, which is not normal.
Amen. So, Zach, when we're looking at gunshot deployment and best practices from a consultant's standpoint, when you're talking to clients, what are some of the best practices for capturing the full potential of this technology?
Well, the biggest thing is making sure that you place the gunshot sensors in the most prominent area where they've got, I'll say, a clear line of sight, but a clear way to hear the gunshots within the range. And for the Acoem product, it's around 500 feet, but it really can go a good bit further than that. But making sure that you've got it at an elevation where you've got a clear line, and if you're in an acoustically active environment, let's say like a construction site or something where there's a lot of noise, you're going to have to make sure that you have the application tuned to that to try to get the AI to filter the nuisance alarms out.
Very good. Anybody want to add to that?
No.
Good. All right, Chief. I kind of want to aim some of my questions today to you about public safety, law enforcement use. And so my first question to you is, how has the evolution of gunshot detection technology influenced technical response protocols for law enforcement and public safety agencies over the past decade?
Oh, this technology has been a force multiplier for police departments across the country. I can speak firsthand to now when someone calls and says, well, we heard shots fired, I think it came from this area. Well, they will get ready to send us in the wrong direction. But having acoustic threat detections sensors would let my officers know, well, first of all, let 911 know where the shots come from, how many shots were fired, because we can play it in real time and listen to those gunshots. And then having the cameras attached to those gunshot sensors, where we can also see in real time the crime scene, or at least where the shots were fired from, because the camera will cue in that direction. So it has helped the Edenton Police Department numerously, because again, we know how many shots were fired. So now when we're at the crime scene, we know we're looking for 5 shell casings. So if we only find 4, that means we're missing somewhere. We need to open up our crime scene area. Or maybe it could have been trampled on by a tire, or it could have been picked up by a vehicle leaving the area. But we know that we're looking for what we're looking for. So I mean, like I said, it's a game changer. Or someone hears what they believe to be a gunshot, but it's a firecracker, or it's a backfire, and we can pull it up and listen to it, and then we can respond appropriately and let them know that it wasn't a shot fired. It was actually a backfire from a pickup truck.
Mike, when I just kind of want you to just embellish a little bit on this, when you're putting together solutions and you're doing public outreach on this, how much are you working with law enforcement and other public safety agencies to kind of design what you're looking to put out there to make jobs easier on the street.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, when we're putting that solution together, it's not just set it and forget it, right? We need to make sure we're putting it in the right place. Where are the hot spots? Typically, agencies have some type of crime statistic map that we get. We start looking at satellite views of line of sight, not just for our sensor, but since our tech can pair with a PTZ camera, I really look for the line of sight with a camera. Also, we don't want to detect a gunshot and slew that camera and we're looking at a tree. So if we can move it a couple feet down the road on another pole to have good line of sight with the camera as well, that's another thing we look at. But really, we work very closely with them when we're deploying with an agency, based on the history of that city, based on where the chief or whoever's in charge of that program wants it. Who's going to be monitoring that? Sometimes you have solutions that have multiple agencies. Maybe they feed back to a real-time crime center where you have the sheriff's departments involved, the local PD involved, maybe campus PD involved. I've been in a few where Homeland Security and FBI are also getting those alerts. So there's a lot of due diligence and a lot of homework when it comes to deploying these in a citywide landscape. So we try to work very closely with those guys.
So Mike, just continuing on that, what role does gunshot detection play in improving emergency response and situational awareness?
Yeah. Just like Chief said earlier, if us four were sitting somewhere and we heard a gunshot, we might all four of us point in four different directions. Our ears, as a human, we all work different. We hear things different. Sound bounces off of things. So the big thing is having that real-time situational awareness, like Chief mentioned. If he gets a call and somebody thinks there was a gunshot, being able to check a camera, listen to an audio file, see a direction and say, okay, I know there's a track meet going on over here. That was a starter pistol. I can see this going on. Maybe there was a fireworks show that he already knew about or didn't know about and can see on a camera there's a firework going off and it said it was a firework and can listen to it and verify that. The other side of that is, and you see this on the news a lot, when you have, sometimes in these mass shooting events or things like that, where you have these eyewitnesses that say, hey, there was 2 shooters, 3 shooters. And then it comes down to it was the same guy with a different gun or shooting a different direction. And just being able to decide and decipher with real-time information, hey, how many shooters do I have? Which way is that shooter moving? If we have him on camera, what is he wearing? And how law enforcement can respond. So.
Very good, Zach. When we're looking at any type of sensor technology, whether we're in an alarm center or using sensitive endpoint technology like this, nuisance alarms are a big deal. So, in your experience and in working with this crew, how can you reduce the number of false alarms that are received for a given sensor location?
Right. Yeah. Well, there's a couple of things, and the first one Mike touched on, with having, and so did Chief King, about having video verification, where you've got the sensor that can pick up with pretty good accuracy using Doppler shift where the shot came from, right, to a specific azimuth and distance. So if you have a co-located camera, you can zoom on that to help verify that and determine whether that's a legitimate alarm. But also non-co-located cameras, because you may have more PTZ cameras deployed than you do gunshot sensors. Right. So have those all where they go and slew to that same location to help give you more information, not only that whether it was a legit gunshot event or not, but to assess what's happening there and to determine whether you need to have some interdiction or just documentation or whatever. But the other thing that comes about it is Acoem, using a live AI model embedded into the sensors, allows for, as he said, listening to the recordings Chief King did, but you can take those recordings and mark them, and then you can actually provide them back to Acoem for updates to the model. So you can, if you think about it, like we just had July 4th, right? And I've got a particular client who had a lot of reports come in for July 4th. And most of them were classified as fireworks, right? Because it was, that type of acoustic signature. But some of them came in as gunfire. So we tagged those and we tried to determine whether or not it was really a gunshot event. And those that weren't, we'll push back so that they can update and refine that to reduce alarms later on.
Very good. Great answer. Chief King, since you've got experience both in urban and rural settings in your law enforcement career, when you're looking at some of the key technical and operational differences between fixed location and mobile gunshot detection systems in an urban and rural law enforcement environment, what are some of the differentiators?
Well, when you go from a city like Rocky Mount, population of 60,000, to a town like Edenton, population of 5,000, sometimes you have to look at the landmark. So, I was blessed because both towns were utility towns. So we were able to put those sensors and cameras on town poles versus having to, get into a spat with Duke Energy about their poles. But sometimes there's not a lot of fiber ran in smaller towns like bigger towns. You don't have the structure in smaller towns like you would the big town. So that's why I'm glad that Acoem came out with the gunshot trailer, because those sensors and trailers can get in places where we may not have utility poles at, we may not have structure there, but we're having problems again. Like Mike said, hot spots. And I want to touch back earlier to what you asked Mike and Zach about the sensors reading falsely. Well, I can tell you that to me in Edenton it was a win-win. Sometimes we got loud mufflers set the alarm off. Well, Edenton is a town where we take pride in noise ordinance. We do not play about loud music or loud mufflers. So having those sensors also, even though it's a false alarm and the AI trained itself, still helped us locate these vehicles and cite the drivers for having these after our market mufflers and get them in compliance. So that was a win-win. Even though we bought these things for a gunshot sensor, it also helped clean up some of the other complaints from citizens, because again, just because we had gunshots, loud mufflers was also important to my citizens as well.
Sure. Mike, when we're looking at how gunshot detection works, and we're talking, any security practitioner knows we're always talking about layered security, starting at the perimeter out and moving in. So how does gunshot technology work with other security technologies from that layered approach? And how can it be a force multiplier? I know Chief has kind of touched on that, but, from your experience.
Yeah. So, going back to the markets I talked about earlier, whether it was, event safety or critical infrastructure or schools, campuses, or citywide deployments, our solution is a little bit different than our colleagues in the industry. We try to pair with a camera, and we're scalable. So we don't need a full, if you want to start with one sensor at a substation or 1,000 sensors over a citywide deployment, it doesn't matter. They're all working independently to localize and work with that co-located camera. So at force, that first layer of security is that PTZ camera that we're co-located with and communicating with through OnVIF. And when we send that elevation and azimuth to slew that camera, that's a big force multiplier, and that's the first layer. We have some customers that use ground-based radar as another layered security to go along with gunshot detection and cameras. We have some that use infrared cameras. We have some that on mobile trailers, since we can deploy one camera, one sensor, and we just need power and comms on these mobile applications. We have some partners and integrators and customers that also to supply talk-down speakers and strobe lights. So when our technology detects an acoustic threat, it not only moves that camera, but maybe flashes lights, maybe does, some talk down to say, hey, gunshot detected, move south, or instructions for that crowd in an event. But we also are working with access control systems through communication there. We plug into different VMS systems and other softwares. So the gunshot is just, one example of and Zach and Chief King can tell you 10 others that we work alongside to give you more. It always comes back to situational awareness and data at the scene in real time. So that's kind of where it plays.
No, that's a great answer. Zach, let's kind of dovetail on Mike's question and answer here. And, we're talking about a layered approach, but integration is also a huge issue. When we're looking at GDS integrating with other platforms for notification and assessment, how are you putting your strategic plans together when you're working on a new project and trying to get this all integrated?
Right. Yeah. Mike touched on part of it. One of the things that kind of drew us to Acoem when I was working on a very large integration project, was their flexibility. And instead of using a direct sensor to camera one-to-one connection via OnVIF, we wrote a spec where they needed to communicate via an API to the actual NVR platform so that we can control more than one camera to slew on that location. And then as a follow-on of that is that once the camera has panned to that event location, initiate auto tracking on the camera so that the camera's optic itself will follow the activity, right? So if the shooter makes a shot and then does a shoot and move tactical type of operation, we'll follow. We don't have to wait for the gunshot to happen again. We can see where he's moving to and help, first responders locate where they're going. Using that, and then some of the other built-in tools within Acoem, that like MQTT, which is a short message type protocol you can use to signal to other systems. We use Kafka on the back end that can push that information to other systems. And then, as he said, Mike, so tying it to radar that can help us locate and identify additional potential threats. All of that integrating with VMS has been a good solution to try to get the most information we can about a potential gunshot event.
Mike, you want to add on to that?
Yeah. So, Zach kind of said it, but one of the big advantages of our tech is that we not only go and spend a lot of time with the end users and the law enforcement and whoever the end users might be, but we also try to create that solution to stay in that single pane of glass or the world they've been working in, right? We don't want to come in and reinvent the wheel. We want to plug into their current softwares that they're already using, so they're not having to completely look at a whole nother screen. So basically, all of our customers kind of use a little bit different. I talked about people using it in a real-time application like Chief King did in Edenton, and Zach is doing as well. But we have some agencies that are not worried about real time. They're worried about the forensic side. And if they have a gunshot, going back and checking those cameras, checking for the alert, knowing exactly where it happened, a date and time stamp. And then they're going checking LPRs on the next block over each way to say, okay, what cars came in, what cars left, and using it in that fashion. But having the ability at Acoem and with ATD to not reinvent somebody's wheel, but to enhance it is a huge benefit.
No doubt. So, Chief, talk to us a little bit about some of the best practices for staying on this integration theme for integrating gunshot detection with real-time crime centers, dispatch systems, and video surveillance feeds to enable this rapid and effective response.
Oh, I mean, I believe this is what every agency in the country needs, because imagine this: a gun is fired. As soon as the gun is fired, if you have sensors in your town, it automatically goes to the officer's phones, the officer's computer, as well as 911 are getting those alerts at the very same time. And then all of a sudden, the phone calls started coming in from citizens who heard the gunshots. We know by the software that we're going north, but all these citizens are telling us they heard it from the south.
Right.
So we can tell them, thank you for the information, but we can direct our officers who should be already en route to the scene based on getting the alerts and showing the triangulation of where the shots were fired from.
I just kind of want to follow up here. I mean, you kind of touched on it already, but how reliable is current gunshot detection systems in differentiating gunfire and similar sounds in a high noise public environment? I mean, are you confident that, when you're getting these alerts, you're going to be able to act on them in real time and be accurate in those assessments?
Absolutely, because ADT Acoem has a playback feature that, again, while officers en route, they can listen. They can they can tell that if it's gunshots versus a firecracker or a starter pistol, as well as a loud muffler. So the officers, unfortunately, we know what gunshots sound like. So I mean, we can tell gunfire versus someone who may been banging on the manhole cover in the middle of the street and it's headed off, for example.
Okay, great. Zach, when we're talking about notification, we kind of hit on this a little bit though, but you just mentioned, but okay, say we got a gunshot event. How do we announce that to those that are monitoring it and to law enforcement? Email, MQTT, SMS, APIs, other forms? I mean, how do we go about doing that?
Right. It really depends upon the application and the scale, right? If you've got a few sensors, then using SMS or email might be okay. And it depends upon what type of messages you're sending, because the platform can send, diagnostic health information, status information, or actual gunshot events and different types of gunshot events, right? The gunshot event that it knows, hey, this really sounds like a gunshot. We got, a pretty solid, confidence that it's a real gunshot, or it's a sniper type thing that it was far away, or some sort of firecracker. All those via email, that could be a lot of emails. And like I said, on 4th of July, when we had that, it could be pretty bad. So other ways to do it, using like an API where you've got that information that can come and process it, and you can layer that information to help validate that it was a real event, and then process that, as Mike was saying, later for forensic or reporting aggregation. But there's a number of ways to do it, and the system is pretty flexible to be able to give you that. And we've right now the client I've got that's using this the most is doing all of them, trying to sort out exactly how they're going to implement this. But ultimately, it's probably going to be through an API that's going to filter it into a PSIM to be able to manage that and other data and aggregate it together.
Chief, how are you getting this information out to your troops?
So I'm very proud to say that that again, what Mike alluded to, they were able to tie into our current RMS system. We have Southern Software, so Southern Software was able to build into Acoem was able to build into Southern Software to where when the alert went off, it went to the 911 center, the dispatchers. It gave us the longitude and latitude, and we knew exactly where the call came from. We had mapping that was already embedded into the RMS system, so it worked out. It worked out perfectly, and I just can't wait to the day that where Acoem builds a self-dispatch drone that can respond to the shots fired with a sensor on it, and then that way the guy's moving and running and shooting, the drone can stay right over top of them. And as we're trying to figure out where it is, because I know they don't have it, but I hope in the future that's coming that way. The drone can dispatch to the scene, and they can have something of that in case you have an active shooter. And you have to realize on college campuses, the shooter may move from one location to another. We need to be able. You're not going to always have sensors at every location where there's a gunshot at. Yeah, I mean, if you do, that means you spend a lot of money. But but having sensors in certain locations, and then having some type of aerial drone or aerial photo that can help us follow individuals, it would be a game changer in the future.
Great answer. Yeah, Mike, when we're talking about, your end user clients, and obviously Chief's one of those, but you go to myriad type environments, campuses, corporate, schools, industrial. When you're talking to your end users, how do you counsel them on couching expectations, how to manage this type of technologies? How do they want to embrace others in their organizations to understand what the alerts mean, especially when you're dealing with the IT department and also other technology management people in their organization?
Yeah, and just like I said earlier, we want the end user to use it the way they want to use it, right? And add that that technology to their current process, right? So combine those technology and processes together. When we're deploying these and these alerts are coming through, it's acoustic threat detection is a sensitive technology. It doesn't matter if it's my sensor or all my other colleagues in the market. It's a proven technology, but it is AI, and it has to have data to learn and improve over time, no matter what environment it's in. So it not only takes the dispatched officers and getting that real-time alert to dispatch to a gunshot detected. It also takes that IT team to get those diagnostic alerts. If a camera disconnects from a sensor, if a sensor goes offline because maybe a network's down, because we have sensors deployed anywhere from cellular communication and Starlink all the way up to fiber connections, which we're not, but they all fail. They all have, some type of disconnect at some point during service. So getting your IT team involved on making sure, you're keeping data and getting the alarms of when something goes down, because you obviously don't want to find out a sensor went down when a shooting happened and it didn't alert. So it's not only getting the dispatched officers and the real-time crime center and the people that are getting these real-time alerts involved. It's getting the IT team involved. It's getting, whoever's maintaining these sensors and cameras involved to, check them on a frequent basis, whatever that may be on their PM schedule. Also, it comes on our side as well, keeping those firmware and AI models updated. Chief King, mentioned when we first deployed in Edenton, he had somebody with a 67 Camaro or whatever it was with no catalytic converter, straight pipes. And that guy stopped at a stop sign on Acoem Street every morning at about 6:57, I guess, on the way to work. And we'd get a gunshot alert at 6:58 and you'd click it and you listen and, you'd hear him revving up. Well, it took us probably about 6 weeks. We put in the data. Chief King and his team did the work to validate that threat and say, no, that's not a gunshot, that's car exhaust. And we took all those lines of data, put it into our AI, and improved it to get away from it. We've had people deploy our sensors next to helicopter landing pads where we had to take that data to filter out that helicopter noise. AI doesn't know what it doesn't know, right? So sure. It takes a team of people from our engineers to the end users and everybody in between to make this successful. But and that goes with any tool and any technology. If you're not maintaining it, if you're not, monitoring its activity, if you're not helping the system, it's not going to help you. So it takes a team. So
that's a great explanation too for the user. And, Zach, when we're talking about, gunshot detection technology, again, it's another endpoint sensor. And what's the point of sensors? The point of sensors is to gather data and information. So when you're, which ultimately is intelligence. So when you're dealing with alarm data management, what type of tools are available to aggregate alarm data for data insights, budget justifications, deployment scenarios, and equipment augmentation?
It depends on how you're collecting that data. Again, we talked about earlier with the types of messaging that you can get, but the back end for the Acoem platform is a SQL database, so you can get that information and pull it into your own data mart. You can use tools like Jitterbug or MuleSoft or those kind of things to do data transformations and put them into whatever platform you want, and then you can generate your statistics and aggregate information on alarms and health information and status boards and those kind of things. They also have a pretty healthy API that we've been playing around with to get that information as well.
Very good. Chief, when we're talking about any type of, intrusive technology, which maybe gunshot detection could be considered. From a public safety standpoint, how are public safety agencies addressing community trust and privacy concerns when deploying gunshot detection technology in the neighborhoods that you guys are serving?
Being very, very transparent, John. Letting the citizens know that we don't have time to just sit and listen to sensors. Just a lot. First of all, you can't just directly log into the sensor and just listen anyway.
Right.
We receive the alerts, but just being very transparent with the citizens and let them know, just like the same way we have cameras around town. We're just not sitting there watching you on the camera as you leave out of one store to go to another. We go to these cameras when something is happening or when something has happened, so we can properly investigate it to see if we can find out what occurred.
Anybody want to add anything to that, Mike?
I'll add to what Chief King said. Even on our side, we don't have the ability to log in sensors and listen. The AI is what triggers that alert, and we provide a 1.5 second audio clip, and that's it of that alert. And our sensor is developed and manufactured out of France, and they go by a way stricter code of Big Brother specs and everything through EU specs, which is a lot stricter and tighter than what we're doing over here in the U.S. and FCC standards and things like that. Yep. So the Big Brother aspect's not there. It's and like Chief King, I've been to these agencies. I've been in the real-time crime centers. These guys aren't just staring at cameras waiting on something to happen. They're busy looking for data for something that's already happened or happening in real time, and they've already gotten some type of threat alert or whatever. So, the Big Brother aspect, somebody's going to complain about that because somebody's going to complain about everything, but there's no ability to listen in. There's no ability to snoop on people and things like that with our technology.
Mike, also, when you're looking at GDS technology, or GSD technology, excuse me, how do you kind of mesh that with those software platforms that are alert-based and are dealing with communication and emergency communications, and keep that simple and also affordable for the end user?
Yes, the first thing we do is, I've said it 10 times already, just, we want it to mix our technology into their current process. So first thing we do is say, hey, what do you have in play already? Do you have a VMS running your cameras? What is it? What cameras do you have? And the first thing we look at is sending, event-based alerts through that VMS, because we have our own software platform called Cadence that provides the mapping, the audio files, the threat alerts. But then there's some people that have their VMS up and maybe have 1,000 different cameras. So the first thing we do is go, okay, whatever camera is paired with, let's create a smart wall or some type of event-based alert in the VMS that populates that camera associated with that sensor. So that's the first thing they see. Then they might get those text or email alerts. Chief King mentioned earlier through Southern Software, which is a middleware there. We did an API with those guys to go straight to 911. We have some people that have access control that we run some type of event-based or API through there. We have some way to communicate with most NVR and VMS platforms. And then when it comes to cameras, as long as they're on VVS protocol and they're NDA compliant, we can communicate with those directly at the edge. So we really want to work with what they have. We don't sell cameras. We don't sell VMS software. We don't sell access control software or middleware. We sell acoustic threat detection sensors, our Cadence platform, and we want to fit into their world. So.
Very good. Zach, when we're talking about product life cycle for a technology like this, what is the life cycle management process for the hardware and the software? And how do you manage equipment failures, notifications, redundancies, upgrades, all of this stuff that goes into the life cycle expectations?
Right. Well, in Acoem's case, the equipment has, as I was mentioning earlier, kind of a heartbeat that it'll give you with health information that is pretty good about reporting what sort of faults it's seeing, including if a microphone's gone offline, or if the sensor's gone offline, or if it can't connect to the network time protocol server or something like that. But also it allows centralized management of firmware, which Mike talked about. On top of all that, you've also got the network aspect of it, making sure that your IT department is keeping up with the network requirements and infrastructure needed. And then just the sensors themselves, right? Everything that you're going to put out in the field, I don't care what it is, if it's a camera, if it's a card reader, if it's a gunshot sensor, if you put it out in the weather, just like having a boat, you got to maintain it or it's going to fail. And eventually it's going to die and you have to replace it. So keeping up with that health information to kind of know what the status of the sensor is very helpful in determining when it's time to start considering, a replacement process for the equipment out there.
Mike, you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I mean, just kind of what Zach said earlier, having that heartbeat alert or communication, so, your end users are getting alert threats, but your IT team is getting those, messages, whether there's a microphone failure, offline, camera communication's bad, NTP communication's bad. We send those alerts directly to those IT guys so they can get those in real time as well. So like I mentioned earlier, to maintain the system and have full success, it takes work. It takes, helping the AI learn, helping, having your IT team involved. And we have some end users that have, a yearly PM schedule where they go out, check calibration on those cameras connected to those sensors, provide some type of reporting to say, okay, we have 40 sensors and these two go offline for some reason, every month, we don't know why. Let's check the switch. Let's check, the power. Let's check the network that's connected to it. So kind of troubleshooting, but having the ability to get the knowledge of why something went offline, whether it was a complete hardware failure physically from our side or if it was some other issue connected to our sensor or other technologies.
Chief, kind of playing off that theme, what are some of the most significant deployment and maintenance challenges that law enforcement agencies face when adopting these types of systems, especially when we're talking about a budget constraint agency or infrastructure limited jurisdictions?
So, John, I would say making sure you have the right plan as relates to camera maintenance and sensor maintenance, making sure that you have what you needed, that somebody's going to come out and test the cameras, test the sensors, clean the lenses off the cameras, because it's not like, something happening and there's a spider web on the camera that's covering the lens and you can't see what's going on. So I would say making sure you have that in place. So that way, if something goes down with a camera or a sensor, then within 8 hours to 12 hours or 24 hours, it's back up and running. Because as law enforcement, the one thing that we don't want to do is have all this equipment and we brag on it, but then when we need it, it's not there for us to be able to solve cases. Because when we do have it and we solve cases, then we're gonna beat our chest like King Kong. So we want to make sure that it's always working. So having that maintenance package in place is, to me, I would say would be the number one thing that departments would need.
Obviously you guys are just like most businesses today and also school districts and things like that, when they're trying to put these preventative technologies into place. How do you deal with the budget issues here? What's your process when you want to first implement this technology, and obviously you're planning on expanding it? What's your procedure on funding grants and all that kind of good stuff?
Well, yeah. So it's twofold, John. So there are grants out there from the federal government or either state grants that may allow us to get acoustic threat detections or some type of gunshot detection software, as well as cameras. And obviously with grants comes responsibilities, providing data, showing how it's going to help improve the community, being able to be inspected, that you're using it for the right reason and you spent the money buying this equipment. But I would say the main one would be the taxpayers. As a chief, I let my taxpayers go to council and who they put in place by voting to say, hey, our police department needs this to keep my community safe. And I, as a taxpayer and as a voting taxpayer, wants to ensure that they get this equipment to keep my community safe. So the people have the voice. So once you win them over, John, the council members, they're going to find money. Well, they're going to find it in the general fund, whether they raise taxes, which I'm not advocating for, but sometimes you have to, depending on the geographic location. The taxes hasn't been raised in a long time, and you haven't had too much tourism, then you may have to raise it a half a cent or a cent, to meet those things.
Good answer. Zach, he was a consultant. When you're going in and looking at, advanced sensor technology like this and AI-driven technologies, what's the ROI and the budget argument that you're making to ensure that, number one, they understand what the technology is going to bring to the table, and number two, what the shareholders are going to understand what the investment's going to be, and what the investment's going to be down the road?
Well, so the return on investment for the citizens and my council is going to be the decrease in shots fired. Well, in the beginning, they're going to go up. I tell folks all the time, when you get the software, because now you're going to receive calls that we didn't receive before. Because remember, when I started the podcast, we talked about how people were so used to gunshots that they stopped calling. So now we're going to start getting these calls when before people just like, oh, they're shooting again, and they never call. So in the beginning, they're going to go up. But on the flip side of that, we're going to be able to respond. We're going to be able to collect the necessary crime scene evidence that we need, the shell casings. We're going to be able to talk to people, get descriptions of vehicles that are leaving, check out license plate readers, find these vehicles, and make the arrest. And then again, we're going to tout this arrest on social media. We're going to let them know, because of our gunshot sensors and our cameras, we had shots fired at 8 p.m. By 10 p.m. on the same day, 2 individuals were taken into custody and arrested for the shot. And that's going to give our citizens the confidence that they need, that one, who did it, they're locked up, and then two, we need to get more sensors and cameras, because they solved that case pretty fast.
Zach, I was going to throw that question at you too. When you're taking this ROI and making the budgetary case in other vertical markets, whether it be critical infrastructure, whether it be K through 12, whether it be college, corporate or corporate campuses, what's your pitch? What's your argument? And what's your strategic plan?
Security in general is always a hard sell if you try to put it in an ROI type of perspective for a client, but it's really more like insurance. And if you look at it either in terms of for utility, if you're trying to say, well, look, you want to protect people and assets, K through 12 probably just going to be people. You're looking at things like, well, what's the value of the asset versus the cost of the system you're putting in? And not only that, damage to reputation, premises liability lawsuits, wrongful death, all those things are the things that tend to get the attention and make them follow on in terms of, okay, I see that this, incremental cost is preventative and going to help down the road.
Very good. Mike, any business that's investing in any type of technologies, they're going to have KPIs. They're going to have metrics that the organization wants to be able to provide for their executives as benchmarks. So, what are the key performance metrics organizations should evaluate when we're looking at GDS technology?
Yeah, so it's going to vary depending on the application, of course. Whether it's critical infrastructure, being pipelines or substations or power plants or manufacturing facilities. There's a few different things they look at versus what maybe Chief King or a law enforcement agency would look at. The first thing they're looking at is from a KPI standpoint is false alarms, like because most of the agencies we talk to have stuck their toe in the water when it comes to gunshot detection, either at another agency or they knew a little bit about it and they didn't like it, or in some cases they loved it. Does it act like this? And all of our other colleagues in the gunshot detection technology market, the false alarms and the accuracy is the main KPI.
Sure.
And obviously you never want to have a false negative and miss a gunshot. And if you ever do, you need to figure out why. So the biggest KPI is false alarms and making sure the system stays online and is giving those alerts like it's supposed
to. Zach, when we're looking at deployment, there are several options. You've got interior and exterior gunshot detection scenarios. what are the differences in the what are the differences there, and also the technology requirements for exterior versus interior? I think you're on mute, brother.
I am on mute. Thank you. It mostly has to do with the acoustic environment and in a lot of cases, the volume. If you're for an interior gunshot sensor, the gunshot event's going to be really loud. And if it's an acoustically active environment where there's not carpet, curtains, those kind of things, or sound absorbing type materials, you're going to get, echoes, reverberations, those kind of things that can cause some issues. But trying to pick up those types of noises interior is much different than exterior. In exterior, you have more range, right? And so you're looking at not only how far away it is, how loud it is, and you're hoping that the gunshot events, and those are going to be, a supersonic type of projectile that you can actually get a good report to give you the direction and distance of the event. So they're a little bit different. Interior gunshot, I have a lot of clients that want it. I've done it at different types of systems. I think the value for interior gunshot is a little bit less than citywide or in a corporate installation type of environment. Interior gunshot, I go, well, how are you going to know where the gunshot's coming from? It's going to be where all the people are running away from. But in general, the two big differences, I think, are just the deployment and the utility of it. I think it's most of my clients are trying to use it outdoors to protect assets. Indoors, it's really trying to protect people.
Cool. All right, I got one last question before we've got one or two questions I want to get to from the audience here, and I'm going to start with the chief on this one, and I want everybody to go around and just kind of give their 2 cents. So, Chief, as we're looking at AI and edge computing advancements in technology, what do you see as future capabilities for gunshot detection in enhancing situational awareness as it relates to your job, policing, and crime deterrence?
Well, I mean, I see it being a force multiplier and enhancing our job because, as the AI, as Mike and Zach alluded to, that AI is constantly being trained. I can tell you when we first got acoustic threat detection, it was going off a lot for loud mufflers. But after the AI trained itself, then we didn't get loud mufflers. And then, we got firecrackers enough. It started detecting it as firecrackers and not gunshots. So once the AI is trained and it started getting those alerts, the more fireworks that they shoot at football games or basketball games, the more the AI gets trained. So it's kind of like just taking yourself out there. The more you go out there and run a mile, the faster you get, or your time slows down and run the mile.
Amen. So Zach, I mean, from your perspective, away from the policing, other predictive and situational awareness that GSD can bring, as far as other type of vertical markets.
Yeah, well, I think the biggest add-ons for any sort of acoustic detection would not only be, you're already doing audio classification, right? But why not go ahead and stratify it where you can try to group, small caliber, large caliber, rifle caliber to give you more information as long as it's accurate. And then add in other layers of things like glass break or screen detection or explosion, because there's a difference between the acoustic signature of an explosion versus a gunshot. And you may want to know those things. So those are natural add-ons that I think are coming. And once the reliability of it comes up to an acceptable level, will be deployed by, quite a few different providers.
Mike, I'll let you finish it out.
Yeah, no, Zach's right. The better we can get from an accuracy standpoint, then that allows us to start looking at other classifications, whether it be caliber. I would like to see drone detection from an acoustic standpoint sometime. But it gets tough because, like Zach mentioned, the glass breaking. We had a lot of people coming to us and wanting to, not only detect gunshots, but detect glass breaking. So, just from an acoustic standpoint, we can all hear a gunshot from, a half a mile away sometimes, depending on which way the wind's blowing. But glass breaking, we might not be able to hear it with our own ears 150 feet away. So you're trying to take instances and threats that come on a large, loud scale, and drill them down to pick up things that are as quiet as a church mouse. So it's hard to do that kind of stuff. But the more accurate we get in what we do, which we release new AI versions pretty often, almost every couple months, to improve systems. The next thing is looking for bigger threats, like maybe drone detection or things like that. We also want to have an easier integration into some of these platforms. We have APIs with some. We have backdoors through event alerts, but create apps for our end users to where they can access more people can access the information easier. So just make it simpler to use and more accurate is where we want to go before we start adding new features to it, if that makes sense.
Very good. Well, gentlemen, I think that's a great place to end today's program. We had a lot of listeners, not a lot of talkers on our audience today, so we're going to end it here. I want to thank everybody who did attend. We had a very robust audience today. The program and the answers were great. Chief King, thank you for your participation, your real life scenarios that really help paint a picture on this. Zach, thank you very much for the consultative side, and of course, Mike, thank you for your insights, and Acoem for being our sponsors today. Following today's presentation, the webinar will be archived on our site for 6 months, and you will receive an email notification once that has occurred. To access more webinars, you can go to securityinfowatch.com/webinars. Again, thanks to Chief King, thanks to Zach, and thanks to Mike Arnold from Acoem. And we will see you on the next program. Everybody have a great week.
Thank you.
Thanks, Steve.